I was reading a book the other day.
Reading a book?
Yes, it's all about civilization or something. A nutty kind of a book. Do you know that the guy says that machinery is going to take the place of every profession?
What do you say?
No.
Tomorrow night?
No.
Next year?
No.
Good. Because by me it's this way. The longer they know, the harder they yes.
Well, I don't want to be honorable with you unless it's absolutely necessary.
It's the Al Travis Show, and we're back to some regular programming, at least stuff we thought we were going to talk about. I'm talking with who, he probably thinks he's the luckiest guy going, but I would disagree a little bit. He's Bill Glahn with the American Experiments and Policy Fellow. He's literally in Washington. He watched the entire Oversight Committee hearing, as I understand it, yesterday. Bill, thanks for being here. Did you draw the short straw?
No, I volunteered for this gig, so I wanted to be in the room.
Okay, here's the thing.
It was going to be 5 hours, but when I came out here, I wanted to be in the room.
And I get that, and I've tried to watch a lot of these hearings. I watched a lot of yesterday's, quite frankly, but I got to watch the highlights, right? When every 5 minutes or whatever it is, the other side talks, and they weren't even asking questions about fraud. They're all making political statements. So I'm like, okay, I can find something else for a minute. I get to see the highlights. That's good for me. But you sat for 5 flipping hours of political jostling back and forth. Was it entertaining? The highlights, but was it entertaining? Is it something you did enjoy? Could you do that on a regular?
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it every day.
Okay.
I'm not sure I could recommend watching the entire 5-hour YouTube video either. But, having done it once, it was an interesting experience because I had been a staff person for many years at the State House of Representatives in St. Paul, and just very, very different to see how things are done at the major league level.
So let me ask you this. What were your thoughts going in? We've all seen these things. Left is going to say they're going to have their 20 things they want to talk about. The right's going to have their 20 things. But we have 3 of our own, right? 3 Minnesotans are going to be up there. 3 representatives, 1 running for governor. They're going to be sitting there. What were your thoughts on what you thought you were going to hear about? Was there any groundbreaking stuff?
I was not at all surprised from what we heard from the Republican members of that fraud committee who flew out for the event. I guess I was surprised you mentioned the Democrats. The Democrats talked about everything other than fraud in Minnesota. We got a lecture on the life and times of John Kennedy. There was a whole rant about George Santos, who was a former congressman from Long Island who ended up being sent to jail. It was just Trump, and again, there were I'm hard pressed to think of a single Democrat who addressed in any substantive way the issue of rampant fraud, other than to point out that it's not just Minnesota. They were bringing up examples from Mississippi and some other states, which, to me reinforced the point that something needs to be done on a nationwide basis.
Well, that's why they're there. They're federal people talking about it. They should be. The idea that we can point other states to makes it worse on them, doesn't it? It's like
that's what I thought. It's these are their programs, and there's rampant fraud all over America, and they thought that was a big own on the Republicans or a big slap to the Minnesota Republicans who showed up. I don't know. I don't know why they bothered, but there were some heated shouting matches during it, which is something we see on the House floor in Minnesota, but we don't normally see in committee. So it was kind of an interesting exercise in, I don't know, small d democracy, I guess.
Rated for me, I'm not ripping everyone else, but I have to tell you that Representative Hudson, who comes on the show on a regular, he's there with us every Monday. I do love the guy and the way he talks. I got to give him somewhere about an A range for what he did. I'm not saying the others did work. Well, I guess they did. I think he was a star there. He literally went toe-to-toe screaming at congressmen, saying, I'm not going to play your game. How do I put it? It was the highlight of I don't know if anything got solved, but it was the highlight of the whole thing, if you ask me. I don't know that I heard about any fraud I didn't know about or anything like that. Was it? With Hudson, how do you grade what he did?
I thought I would give it A to all 3. I thought they all did an excellent job. Again, you're going into a not comfortable environment, and I don't know if any of them had ever testified before Congress before. I haven't. But for them to sit there for 5 hours with no break, there was never a break. There was never an
I was going to ask
intermission
you,
or
they
anything.
don't take potty breaks at all in 5 hours?
Well, they could shuffle them in and out a little bit, but
Okay.
the problem is you're out of the room for a few minutes, and maybe
You don't
someone
know.
was going to ask you a question. So,
Good.
for the most part, the witnesses were there, and there was one
Wow.
Democrat witness too. They were there the full 5 hours. The committee
Wow.
chair presided, as far as I could tell, uninterrupted for the full 5 hours. It
Okay.
was just an amazing spectacle. I thought all three of our Republican reps did an excellent job. Walter was great. Kristen Robbins, who was the chair of the fraud committee, she did an excellent job. They all three made presentations. Marion Rarick
Yeah.
was there. She did a great job talking about her encounters with the whistleblowers and what they had to share. Her husband, State Senator Jason Rarick, was seated next to me and right behind her to
Okay.
provide moral support. So it was a great showing by the at least the Republican caucus of the state of Minnesota. All four of our Republican congresspersons from Minnesota appeared and did their 5-minute question and answer period. Not a single Democrat from Minnesota showed up. So that was
Interesting.
noted. They were noted in their absence, but all four Republican congressmen showed up. Not Ilhan Omar. A couple of her squad teammates were there and ranting. But
what would you say you learned? You're in on this. You've been following the American experiment has been leading the way as far as keeping track of fraud and what's going on in this state. I mean, I don't know who would be even close. Was there anything that came up in this hearing in 5 hours of questioning by brilliant minds on both sides that you learned that you didn't know?
Well, I did learn one thing, that John Kennedy is the only U.S. president to have been awarded the Purple Heart. I was a little surprised by that because you think of George H.W. Bush, he got shot down over the Pacific. You think of all the other, and the Purple Heart goes back to George Washington, but this is
Glahn,
the only.
that is, you got to do radio on the regular, my friend. You have to. They ask you that question, and it's like, well, yeah, JFK and the Purple Heart.
Yeah, so
that is too funny.
But there were parts of it in the 5 hours. If you wanted to look for it, there was a real substantive debate going on, and the debate centered around what the federal government should do to try to counteract the fraud or to give some disincentives to state government. For example, it came up several times. Perhaps if the state government, in this case Minnesota, had to bear more of the cost of these programs, then they would treat it more like their money rather than somebody else's money, and put a little bit more due diligence into their vetting. So again, there was some serious proposals that were discussed during the 5 hours, but there was a fair amount of grandstanding and just screaming.
Did it come up at all? And I mean this wholeheartedly because this is Al's way of fixing this. I use the autism thing as an example. The Minnesota says we have a way we can help autistic kids. Send it off to the federal government. They okay it to send us the money, and then the fraud happens. When we sent off a proposal to the federal government, it was, well, we're going to help kids with autism. They don't have to have a medical diagnosis of having autism. The person helping doesn't necessarily have a degree in autism care, teaching, or anything else. It literally, no outcomes are needed either. We don't know how we'll get them off autism. None of that was ever, and the federal government said, okay. Isn't the federal government somewhat liable to the fact that they just said, do the best you can, here's the money, Minnesota, and left it up to these people?
Well, and I think that's why you see, and it's something like 8 or 10 different federal government agencies are investigating what's going on in Minnesota. So I think that is recognized, at least implicitly in that action, that the feds are going, we need to get to the bottom of this. And maybe they were too lax, too lenient, too forgiving in these experimental programs. And so I think we'll probably see that as a positive outcome of all this, just the tightening of the screws and not giving just so much slack to states like Minnesota, who are not spending their own money and not being particularly careful in expecting results.
Let me ask you this. Was there any conversation that you heard that showed anybody being culpable other than votes? And what I mean by that, yes, we're seeing feeding our future people who lied going to jail. I get that. Are we going to see any parents who put their kids in autism care without being autistic because they got a kickback? evidently kickbacks in Minnesota aren't illegal, but I believe they are in the federal government. And is there any division head, is there any boss in charge of this program or that culpable legally, or can they just throw their hands up? Yeah, we tried it. We aren't very good at this, and they just get voted out.
Again, nothing that really came out in the hearing in public, but it's my understanding from statements made by the chairman in media and other settings that they are looking at individual employees in these agencies, whether it's the commissioner or a deputy commissioner, assistant commissioner, to examine just that. That we've been kind of taking it on faith that, wow, they maybe they look the other way and just were incompetent, but there's nothing culpable. Well, I think they're taking a fresh look at that to see if any of these agency employees or agency officials have any culpability in all this.
Well, you land me right where we were going to talk about from yesterday. I was ranting and raving on this program because all my worst fears were produced true with the OLA report. And I want to talk with Bill Glahn about that right after the break. You got 2 minutes, sir? We'll be back right after this.
Think about it. A famous politician once said, "You're entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts." But in a world full of AI and fake news, where can Minnesotans find the facts? Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's go-to source for fact-based analysis and common sense solutions for taxes, energy, public safety, and our kids' education. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
You need a friend at the Capitol who knows how to get things done.
And you're in luck, because that's exactly who we are, your friends at the Capitol, and we deliver results.
At Momentum Advocacy, we bring decades of experience in lobbying, public affairs, and crisis communications.
From local nonprofits to national corporations, we help you move policy, manage your media, and make your voice heard.
We're not just seasoned pros, we're essential partners.
Momentum Advocacy, your friends at the Capitol. Learn more at momentum-advocacy.com.
Don't need to ask him his opinion more than once. Al Travis on the Al Travis Show.
And we've gotten Bill Glahn in talking about fraud here in Minnesota's American Experiment. I mean, covers this like nobody's business. Sir, Dave, for yesterday, I guess it was yesterday morning in the paper, but Dave, for yesterday, the AOL report came out, and this gal was on there, the head of it, and she said in her 27 years she's never seen anything like this. But some in the department, it wasn't one person, but many, when they asked for paperwork, they found that they created the documents after and backdated them to look like they were done earlier. Now, this is, okay, All right, that's obviously wrong, but what she said next was, while it's not necessarily a violation of state law, it hurts her ability to do her job. Sir, I throw to you. This is what drives, I think, average Minnesotans nuts. You sit here and think, how can this be? How can no one get fired? How can no one be put, for this money going out the door? If you can literally make documents up after the fact and post datum to prove whatever point you want, obviously you're not doing it because you were in the right, and you're not even violating state law. I'm filling out my taxes. I'm scared to death I'm going to forget a line of the 600 and some lines of crap I got to fill out because I don't want to go to jail for fraud. Is that even possible? Is this what she said? Drives me crazy.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, and Judy Randall, the legislative auditor, does good work, so I'm not questioning her, but I find it difficult to believe. What I've lost my capacity for surprise at is the nonfeasance, misfeasance, and malfeasance at the State Department of Human Services. So, that they backdated documents, created documents. That sounds like forgery. Documents didn't exist, and you created documents to be responsive ex post to a data.
And it ruins their argument, sir. If it was, we're so darn busy handing out so much money, I don't have time for the paperwork. That's why it was missing. And then the Democrats could argue with you, we need more money to hire more people to do more of this. I mean, at least they'd have a leg to stand on. But if you have time to make the documents afterwards and post datum backwards, it's the same amount of time it would have taken you to fill them out in the first place. You lose your argument. You're just doing bad things. Let me throw this at you.
That's not against some sort of rule or I would think law, but some sort of rule or procedure that you do not backdate documents. Yeah, you try that with the IRS, Al. You're going to federal prison.
Let me ask you this. I make you in charge of the Department of Human Services because she was in that room when this stuff came out. And then they had her set up and they're going to ask her some questions. And she started out right away. I had no clue that was going on. I am shocked. And this wasn't one person, this is many.
She was an assistant or deputy commissioner. Yeah. She's been there for a lot of years. Yeah. And how she has any capacity to be shocked by her own agency is beyond me. But
here's my point.
People need to be fired. People need to be demoted. Pensions need to be lost.
Glahn, that's where you're right. If it was me and I was sitting in that meeting and I heard that my people were doing this, I would have picked up my phone in the hallway, called whoever and said, fire everyone who they're talking about. Fire them. I don't care if they want to sue the state because they got some union. I don't care. You're not doing that here. You know what I'm saying? That's what I would have done. And yet she's like, oh, I'm going to look into it. What? Okay.
She doesn't ever look into it. In fact, and I looked this up the other day. We have a different system in Minnesota where if you're appointed to a cabinet level position, you serve until the Senate decides to confirm or not.
Yeah.
He has never been confirmed as the Commissioner of Human Services. I would sincerely hope in this next session we have a confirmation hearing for and bring all this stuff up.
I love that. One last thing quick before I let you go, because this drives me nuts. A DHS grant manager authorized a $672,000 payment to a company that didn't describe what they did in that month. He just okayed it, sent it off. What do you know? 2 days later, he quits his department job and goes to work as a consultant for this company. That may not be illegal. What? Then how do I get me a grant manager spot? Because that's got to be a revolving door of fun.
Right. The revolving door is a huge problem. And we've seen this at the legislator level, and they've been trying to do something to pass laws, whereas somebody takes some legislation through, gets it signed by the governor, and then immediately leaves, doesn't run for re-election, and goes and works for that company or organization. And you see that in the state. There should be a 1 year pause or something like that. If you had any direct dealings with vendors or people doing business with the state, then you should not be able to work for them for a year or 18 months.
Forever. You decide to work for the state of Minnesota, Al and Bill. You're working for us. We thoroughly expect you to do that because you want to make a living and we want to take care of you. You got great retirement. You got all the rest. You know what you can't do? Go work for anybody you touch in your job here. And ever. If you can't live with that, don't work for us.
Just basic governmental ethics that you can't have this one hand washes the other thing, but it goes on all the time.
And I hate the fact you seem okay. You don't seem as my blood pressure goes up talking, Bill, and I don't think you're even quite awake yet. You're as calm as a cucumber.
Well, it's my cynicism from having seen it for so many years, up close and personal. I didn't do it, but I saw it happen to other people who were in agencies that oversaw industries and then left and then immediately took a job with one of those industries.
It's just terrible. Okay, sir, I love having you on. I thank you for filling in. You're out there on the coast and taking care of business for us. Thank you for coming on the program. I really do appreciate you.
Thanks for having me back.
He's Bill Glahn with the American Experiment.